Hey everybody, what's going on? In this video, we're talking about the sales role play. First, we'll talk about, what is a sales role play, and then after that, we'll walk through a framework to help you answer the sales role play interview question during your next sales interview. So first of all, what is a sales role play? So it's most commonly a sales training technique. So it's a way for new salespeople to practice selling, but it's also used a lot in sales interviews. If you've ever been through a sales interview, you've probably already experienced this, where the interviewer will ask you to sell them something. A really famous example is the interviewer will hand the interviewee a pen and say, okay, sell me this pen. It's also famous because there's a scene in the movie Wolf of Wall Street where that happens. But more often than not, the interviewer is actually going to ask you to sell them their own product, or in other words, the product that you will be selling if you get the job. And then you're going to go through a scenario where the interviewer pretends to be a prospect that's considering whether or not to buy the product, and you pretend to be the salesperson, and you actually try to sell them the product. So that's what a sales role play is. Now, in terms of how to actually do the sales role play successfully, we're going to walk through a 3-step process to help you ace the sales role play in your sales interview. The first thing to keep in mind is the biggest mistake people make when they are doing a sales role play is they start by making statements. This is a rookie mistake for someone who has never been in sales before. And the reason being is that sales is all about asking questions and gaining more information about your buyer, especially in the beginning of the sales process. So if the interviewer asks you to sell them something, let's imagine it's a pen, and you immediately start by saying, okay, you should buy this pen because it's got a really fine tip point, it's a really good brand, it has a rubber grip on it, it has a click, and you start explaining all the features of your product, you're losing your control of the sales situation. Instead of starting with statements, you want to start with questions. So that's step number 1 in nailing the sales role play. Remember, you want to start with questions. If you just do that alone, you'll be better than 75% of the other candidates who are doing the sales role play. And so if we're pretending that the interviewer has asked you to sell them a pen, you want to ask questions like, well, what pen are you using currently? Why are you looking for a new pen? What do you like about your current pen? What are you looking for in a new pen? And then you're going to get the interviewer to start talking and answering your questions. And now it becomes a way more relaxed conversational situation. And you're also learning about exactly what your prospect wants in terms of the purchase decision that they're going to make. So maybe your interviewer is telling you, I have a black pen now, but I want a blue pen. Or maybe the interviewer tells you, I have a really bold tip point, but I want a finer tip point. Whatever the interviewer tells you, you're going to start remembering that and using that to match it with the value of the product that you're selling. So let's go with the example of your interviewer has said, I have a black pen and I want a blue pen. If you look down at the pen you're supposed to be selling and it's a blue pen, that's a perfect situation. So your prospect has told you exactly what they want to buy, and you now have a product with a feature that matches what they want to buy. So after you've gained enough information about your prospect to know what they want to buy, then you go on to step 2. Step 2 is selling value. So the way you're going to sell value is very specific. You are going to match the features of your product to what your prospect has said they need. In this case, you're going to tell your prospect that this is a blue pen, and that's exactly what they're looking for. And so what this sounds like is you ask the questions, and then when you're ready to sell value, you can say something like, all right, Bob or Sarah or whatever their name is. All right, Sarah, so it sounds like you, based on what you've told me so far, you are looking for a pen that has blue ink, and you currently have a pen that has black ink. Well, the reason I think that we have a great solution for you is this pen right here actually has blue ink. So something like that to emphasize the feature that the prospect is interested in purchasing. And then after that, you're going to move on to step 3, which is you ask for the close. This is very important as well. A lot of times in a sales role play, a mistake that's made is that it gets too long and you don't get to the point where you can actually ask for the sale in a very crisp and concise way. And so the way you're going to do this is you're going to show the value, and then immediately after showing, or shortly after showing the value, you're going to ask for the sale, especially because this is not going to be a long role play. It's probably only going to last like 2 or 3 minutes. You can move pretty quickly to asking for the sale. And so I would actually pair, in most cases, you can pair it with right after you express the value. So the way it would sound is something like, all right, Sarah, so you mentioned you want a pen with blue ink. This pen right here has blue ink. The cost is $99.95. Hand Sarah the pen, and we take cash or card. And then pause. That's the other important thing, is you want to pause after you ask for the sale. Because in a lot of sales situations, after you ask for the sale, whoever talks first loses. You don't want to stumble over your words to say something else. If there's a long pause, just embrace the pause and be quiet and wait for your prospect to respond. So those are the 3 steps to the sales role play. Start with questions. That's probably the most important part. Then sell the value of your product. And then finally ask for the close. All right, so one more thing to cover in terms of how to approach the sales role play in a sales interview. I would suggest asking for feedback. So after you've done the role play, you want to ask the interviewer, how do you think I did? Do you have any feedback for me on how I could have done better? This shows that you have a growth mindset and you're ready to learn and you're willing to implement feedback. This is super important in a sales career. Nobody comes into a sales career being the best salesperson on the planet. You have to make mistakes and learn. That's the only way to get better at sales. And so by asking for feedback, you're indicating that you are going to be a good learner and willing to implement feedback in the sales role. After you get the feedback, ask to try again. And so that will sound something like this. Thanks, Sarah, so much for that feedback. Do you mind if I try again? I'd like to try to implement that feedback to see if I can do better. If the interviewer does give you an opportunity to try the sales role play again, make sure to specifically implement the feedback they just gave you. If you're able to do this, it's going to be very impressive for the interviewer, and they're definitely going to think, okay, this is somebody who is willing to learn and has an ability to implement feedback, and they'll be confident that this is somebody who can really excel in the sales role that they're hiring for. So there you have it. We covered what is a sales role play, the 3 steps to answer the sales role play, and also how to ask for feedback after the sales role play. Good luck on your next sales interview.